Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna Vivan, Hare Krishna Arav, Arya, Hare Krishna Sia, Hare Krishna Jai, Shaurya. Nice to see you everyone here. Welcome back to Youth Jam, and we'll be beginning our program as usual with a prayer. And since we have a small group, I think there's a very small pool for who gets nominated. So if you know how this works, we'll have someone nominate another person, and if we get that seconded, we can hear a nice prayer, hopefully from that person. So would anyone like to make a nomination? Okay, Sia has nominated Arya, and Arya has nominated Sia. Who wants to go? I second both of you.
I can go. Can you send the format
All right,
invite?
yeah, let me send the prayer forward. Here you go.
Thank you. My dear Shishirada Nilmadov, if you so desire, please let this youth gen go smoothly and maybe gain something insightful that we carry into our sadhana. Thank you for considering my request. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Sia. It was a really nice prayer. And with that, we can get started with our Youth Jam program. And we'll start. It's a better way to start than with our Chad reading. We're still continuing from the second half of chapter 11 of the Bhagavad Gita. Pulled up on the slides. And since we have, again, a small group, we can take turns reading the translations. So feel free to raise your hand if you want to read a few verses in the translations. Can anyone see the screen? All right. I'll start, and we can all raise your hand if you would like to read 5 translations. O mighty armed one, all the planets with their demigods are disturbed at seeing your great form, with its many faces, eyes, arms, thighs, legs, and bellies, and your many terrible teeth. And as disturbed as they are, so am I. O all-pervading Vishnu, seeing you with your many radiant colors touching the sky, your gaping mouth, and your great glowing eyes, my mind is perturbed by fear. I can no longer maintain my steadiness or equilibrium of mind. O Lord of Lords, O refuge of the worlds, please be gracious to me. I cannot keep my balance, seeing thus your blazing, death-like faces and awful teeth. In all directions I am bewildered. All the sons of Dhritarashtra, along with their allied kings, and Bhishma, Drona, and Karna, and our chief soldiers also, are rushing into your fearful mouths, and some I see trapped with heads smashed between your teeth. Go ahead.
Uh, okay. As the many waves of the rivers flow into the ocean, so do all these great warriors enter blazing into your mouths. I see all people rushing full speed into your mouths, as moths dash to destruction in a blazing fire. O Vishnu, I see you devouring all people from all sides with your flaming mouths. Covering all the universe with your effulgence, you are manifest with terrible scorching rays. O Lord of Lords, so fierce of form, please tell me who you are. I offer my obeisances unto you. Please be gracious to me. You are the primal Lord. I want to know about you, for I do not know what your mission is. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Time I am the great destroyer of the worlds, and I have come here to destroy all people. With the exception of you, the Pandavas, all the soldiers here on both sides will be slain. Therefore get up, prepare to fight and win glory. Conquer your enemies and enjoy a flourishing kingdom. They are already put to death by my arrangement, and you, O Savyasachi, can be but an instrument in the fight.
Drona, Bhishma, Jayadratha, Karna, and the other great warriors have already been destroyed by me. Therefore, kill them and do not be disturbed. Simply fight, and you'll vanquish your enemies in battle. Sanjaya said to Dhritarashtra, O king, after hearing these words from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the trembling Arjuna offered obeisances with folded hands again and again. He fearfully spoke to Krishna in a faltering voice, as follows. Arjuna said, O master of the senses, the world becomes joyful upon hearing your name, and thus everyone becomes attached to you. Although the perfect beings offer you their respectful homage, the demons are afraid and they flee here and there. All this is rightly done. O Great One, greater even than Brahma, you are the original creator. Why then should they not offer their respectful obeisances unto you? O Limitless One, God of gods, refuge of the universe, you are the invincible source, the cause of all causes, transcendental to this matter manifestation. You are the original personality of Godhead, the oldest, the ultimate sanctuary of this manifested cosmic world. You are the knower of everything, and you are all that is knowable. You are the supreme refuge, above the material modes, all limitless form. This whole cosmic manifestation is pervaded by you.
You are air and you are the supreme controller. You are fire, you are water, and you are the moon. You are Brahma, the first living creature, and you are the great grandfather. I therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto you 1,000 times and again and yet again. Obeisances to you from the front, from behind, and from all sides. O unbounded power, you are the material of limitless might. You are all pervading, and thus you are everything. Thinking of you as my friend, I have rashly addressed you, O Krishna, O Yadava, O my friend, not knowing your glories. Please forgive whatever I may have done in madness or in love. I have dishonored you many times, just as we relaxed lay on the same bed or sat or ate together, sometimes alone and sometimes in front of many friends. O infallible one, please excuse me for all those offenses. You are the father of this complete cosmic manifestation of the moving and the non-moving. You are its worshipful chief, the supreme spiritual master. No one is greater than you, nor can anyone be with you. How then could there be anyone greater than you within the three worlds, O Lord of immeasurable power? You are the supreme Lord to be worshipped by every living being. Thus I fall down to offer you my respectful obeisances and ask you your mercy. As a father tolerates the impudence of a son, a friend the impertinence of a friend, or a husband the familiarity of his wife, please tolerate the wrongs I may have done to you.
After seeing this universal form, which I have never seen before, I am gladdened, but at the same time my mind is disturbed with fear. Therefore, please bestow your grace upon me and reveal again your form as the personality of Godhead, O Lord of Lords, O abode of the universe. O universal form, O thousand-armed Lord, I wish to see you in your four-armed form, with helmeted head and with club, wheel, conch, and lotus flower in your hands. I long to see you in that form. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Arjuna, happily I have shown you, by my internal potency, this supreme universal form within the material world. No one before you has ever seen this primal form, unlimited and full of glaring effulgence. O best of the Kuru warriors, no one before you has ever seen this universal form of mine, for neither by studying the Vedas, nor by performing sacrifices, nor by charity, nor by pious activities, nor by severe penances can I be seen in this form in the material world. You have been perturbed and bewildered by seeing this horrible feature of mine. Now let it be finished. My devotee, be free again from all disturbances. With a peaceful mind, you can now see the form you desire.
Sanjaya said to Dhritarashtra, "The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, has spoken thus to Arjuna, displayed his real four-armed form, and at last showed his two-armed form, thus encouraging the fearful Arjuna." When Arjuna thus saw Krishna in his original form, he said, "O Janardana, seeing this human-like form so very beautiful, I am now composed in my mind, and I restored to my original nature." The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Arjuna, this form of mine you are now seeing is very difficult to behold. Even the demigods are ever seeking the opportunity to see this form, which is so dear." The form you were seeing with your transcendental eyes cannot be understood simply by studying the Vedas, nor by undergoing serious penitence, nor by charity, nor by worship, and is not by these means that no one can see me as I am. My dear Arjuna, only by undivided devotional service can I be understood as I am, standing before you, and can thus be seen directly. Only in this way can you enter into the world, into the mysteries of my understanding.
My dear Arjuna, he who engages in my pure devotional service, free from the contaminations of fruitive activities and mental speculations, he who works for me, who makes me the supreme goal of his life, and who is friendly to every living being, he certainly comes to me. Om Tat Sat iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Supanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga Nama Ekadasho Dhyayaha Hari Om. All right. Where is the... Thank you everyone for reading and participating. And since we have some time, I think we can also take a look at some, or one of the purports at least. Would anyone like to pick a verse between 23 and 55? Arya?
46.
46. Okay, let's go look at text 46. All right, Arya, would you like to read the translation and purport?
Yeah. O universal form, O thousand-armed Lord, I wish to see you, you in your four-armed form, with helmeted head and with club, wheel, conch, and lotus flower in your hands. I long to see you in that form. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated, Ramadi Murtishu Kala Niyamena Tishtan. The Lord is eternally situated in hundreds and thousands of forms, and the main forms are those like Ram, Narsimha, Narayan, etc. There are innumerable forms, but Arjuna knew that Krishna is the original personality of Godhead, assuming his temporary universal form. He is now asking to see the form of Narayana, a spiritual form. This verse establishes without any doubt the statement of the Srimad Bhagavatam that Krishna is the original personality of Godhead, and all other features originate from him. He is not different from his plenary expansions, and he is God in any of his innumerable forms. In all of these forms, he is fresh like a young man. That is the constant feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who knows Krishna becomes free at once from all contamination of the material world.
Thank you, Arya. Would you like to give a small commentary on the commentary here? Anything you liked or picked up from the verse in the purport?
So Arjuna was scared from seeing the universal form, so he wanted to see Krishna in the Narayan form. And he is the original personality of Godhead, and he does not age. He is a young man, and Arjuna only wanted to see the four-armed form of Krishna.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, that's important to know that Arjuna was a little, taken aback by this vision of the universal form that, Krishna had displayed. Uh, and we've, I think, read, if any of you were here before in previous weeks, we've read through the earlier verses in the chapter and their purports where it's explained why this universal form is sort of an undesirable vision to behold, because as Arya said, it's kind of scary. You don't like to see naturally this uh, vision of this fearful giant. It's a very gigantic form, and with fire blazing from the mouths, with people's heads getting crushed in the teeth of this form. So it's a very fearful form. And Arjuna, as a soul, he also saw this vision and wasn't really, it wasn't appealing to him. And so he wanted to also, but as Krishna was displaying his forms, he was also inquiring about and wanting to see the four-armed form as Narayan. And so Prabhupada is explaining in this purport that Narayan is also a form of Krishna, an expansion of Krishna. So Krishna, and we see in the next verse, I think, or in the next couple verses, where Krishna it eventually returns to his normal human-like two-hand form. So that's the most approachable version and or form of Krishna that we can worship and have a some sort of a relationship with. So thank you, Arya. Would anyone else like anything to share or point out? Anything they liked? I think that since this is a pretty small purport, let me see if there's anything further down in the next verse, because there's almost not enough nectar we can ever get from the Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam for that matter. Let me read this purport or this verse in purport as well. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Arjuna, happily have I shown you by my internal potency the supreme universal form within the material world. No one before you has ever seen this primal form, unlimited and full of glaring effulgence." Purport: Arjuna wanted to see the universal form of the Supreme Lord. So Lord Krishna, out of his mercy upon his devotee Arjuna, showed his universal form full of effulgence and opulence. This form was glaring like the sun, and its many faces were rapidly changing. Krishna showed this form just to satisfy the desire of his friend Arjuna. This form was manifested by Krishna through his internal potency, which is inconceivable by human speculation. No one had seen this universal form of the Lord before Arjuna, but because the form was shown to Arjuna, other devotees in the heavenly planets and in other planets out in outer space could also see it. They had not seen it before, but because of Arjuna, they were also able to see it. In other words, all the disciplic devotees of the Lord could see the universal form, which was shown to Arjuna by the mercy of Krishna. Someone has commented that this form was shown to Duryodhana also when Krishna went to Duryodhana to negotiate for peace. Unfortunately, Duryodhana did not accept the peace offer, but at that time Krishna manifested some of his universal forms. But those forms are different from this one shown to Arjuna. It is clearly said that no one had ever seen this form before. I think from the way that Prabhupada also is able to extract the most important points from the verse, because the verse is directly spoken by Krishna here. So when Krishna says, "No one before you has ever seen this primal form," it's not that we can pick up some other interpretation. Our Prabhupada is very strongly emphasizing that this form, it's clearly said, no one has ever seen this form before. So it's such an interesting point as well that, through Arjuna, and because he asked to see this form, so many other entities in the universe were able to also see this form that they hadn't seen before. So, and it's also mentioned that so many people uh, were never able to see, including Duryodhan, even the form that Krishna had displayed in, I guess, in Hastinapur when he went to negotiate for peace. So again, unlimited forms. Krishna has unlimited forms. It's truly amazing. And every time I look back at this passage or in this section of Bhagavad Gita, it's somewhat like a distraction from the rest of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. Last call for any reflections, comments, questions, anything people liked. These are really nice verses. If not, I think we can move on to our Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita reading. This is another part of our Youth Gen programs that we can really learn a lot about Srila Prabhupada, who I was referring to in the purport. He's the one who had translated and commented on the Bhagavad Gita and all these other literary works. So, what's more valuable than learning about the journey of Srila Prabhupada? So, we'll read 3 paragraphs each. Please raise your hand if you would like to read, and I'll get started. The next room was bare except for a fancy coffee table, which became Prabhupada's altar. Here he placed a framed picture of Lord Chaitanya and his associates. On the wall, he hung an Indian calendar print of four-armed Lord Vishnu and Anantashesh, the celestial snake. And as in the Bowery loft, he put up a clothesline. Both rooms were freshly painted, and the floors were clean hardwood parquet. The bathroom was clean and serviceable, as was the narrow furnished kitchen. Prabhupada would sometimes stand by the kitchen window, gazing beyond the courtyard wall. He had moved here without any prospects of paying the next month's rent. Although Carl, Mike, Carol, James, Bill, and others had encouraged him to move here, some of them now found it a little inconvenient to visit him regularly. But they all wished him well and hoped new people would come here to help him. They felt that this location was the best yet, and he seemed more comfortable here. At the Paradox, Bill would spread the word of Swamiji's new address. Sia, go ahead.
The Lower East Side has a history of change and human suffering as Old New York. 300 years before Prabhupada's arrival, it had been part of Peter Stuyvesant's estate. Today's landmark of Thompson Square Park had then been a salt marsh known as Stuyvesant's Swamp. The Lower East Side first became a slum in the 1840s when thousands of Irish immigrants, driven by the Irish potato famine, came and settled. 2 decades later, the Irish became the image of the American to the next immigrants, the Germans, who gradually grew in numbers to become the largest immigrant group in New York City. Next came East European Jews, Poles, and Ukrainians, and by 1900, the Lower East Side had become the most densely populated Jewish ghetto in the world. But in the next generation, the ghetto began to break up as Jews moved to the suburbs and economic advancement. Next, the Puerto Ricans thronged in, hundreds of thousands in the 1950s, immigrating from their island poverty or moving in from East Harlem. They and the Negroes from Harlem and Bedford-Stuyvesant arrived next, were the new groups who, along with the Poles and Ukrainians, populated the 2 square miles of tenements and crowded streets that formed the Lower East Side slums in the 1960s.
At first, the newcomers were mostly young artists, musicians, and intellectuals, similar to the hip crowd of Prabhupada's Bowery days. Then came the young middle-class dropouts. Because living space is more available and rents were lower in nearby Greenwich Village, we concentrated here on the Lower East Side, which in the parlance of the renting agents became known as the East Village. Many even came without finding a place to live and camped in the hallways of tenements. Drawn by cheap rent and the promise of bohemian freedom, these young middle-class dropouts, the avant-garde of a nationwide youth movement, soon to be known in the media as hippies, wandered the Lower East Side slums in living protest against America's good life of materialism. As if As if responding to an instinctual call, young teenager runaways joined the older hippies. Following the runaways came the police, counselors, social and welfare workers, youth hostels, and drug counseling centers. On St. Mark's Place, a new hip commercialism sprang up, with head shops, poster shops, record shops, art galleries, and bookstores that carried everything from cigarette papers to hip clothes and psychedelic lighting. The hippies journeyed to the Lower East Side in full conviction that this was the place to be, just as their immigrant predecessors had done. For the European immigrants of another age, New York Harbor had been the gateway to a land of riches and opportunity, as they at long last set their eyes on Manhattan's skyline and the Statue of Liberty. Now, in 1966, American youth thronged to New York City with hopes of their own and feasted on the vision of their newfound mystical land, the Lower East Side slums.
It was an uneasy coexistence, with hippies on one side and Puerto Ricans, Poles, and Ukrainians on the other. The established ethnic groups represented the newcomers who didn't really have to live in the slums, whereas they themselves did. In fact, many of the young newcomers were from immigrant families that had struggled for generations to establish themselves as middle-class Americans. Nevertheless, the youth migration to the Lower East Side was just as real as the immigration of Puerto Ricans or Poles or Ukrainians had been, although the motives of the course were quite different. The hippies had turned from the suburban materialism of their parents, the inane happiness of TV and advertising, the ephemeral goals of middle-class America. They were disillusioned by parents, teachers, clergy, public leaders, and the media, dissatisfied with American policy in Vietnam, and allured by radical political ideologies that exposed America as a cruel, selfish, exploitative giant who must now reform or die. And they were searching for real love, real peace, real existence, and real spiritual consciousness. By the summer of Srila Prabhupada's arrival at 26 Second Avenue, the first front in the Great Youth Rebellion of the 60s had already entered the Lower East Side. Here they were free to live in simple poverty and express themselves through art, music, drugs, and sex. The talk was of spiritual searching. LSD and marijuana were the keys, opening new realms of awareness. Notions about Eastern cultures and Eastern religions were in vogue. Through drugs, yoga, brotherhood, or just by being free, somehow they would attain enlightenment. Everyone was supposed to keep an open mind and develop his own cosmic philosophy by direct experience and drug-expanded consciousness, blended with his own eclectic readings. And if their lives appeared aimless, at least they had dropped out of a pointless game where the player sells his soul for material goods, and in this way supports a system that's already rotten. So it was that in 1966. Thousands of young people were walking the streets of the Lower East Side, not simply intoxicated or crazy, though often they were, but in search of life's ultimate answers, in complete disregard of the establishment and the day-to-day life pursued by millions of straight Americans.
That preposterous land of America could breed so many discontented youths surprised Prabhupada. Of course, it also further proved that material well-being, the hallmark of American life, couldn't make people happy. Prabhupada did not see the unhappiness around him in terms of the immediate social, political, economic, and cultural causes. Neither slum conditions nor youth rebellions were the all important realities. They were symptoms of universal happiness, to which the only cure was Krishna consciousness. He sympathized with the miseries of everyone, but he saw the universal solution. Prabhupada had not made a study of the youth movement in America before moving to the Lower East Side. He had never even made specific plans to come here amid so many young people. But in the 10 months since Calcutta, he had been moved by force of circumstances, or as he understood it, by Krishna's will, from one place to another. On the mission of a spiritual master, he had come to America, and by Krishna's will, he had come to the Lower East Side. His mission here was the same as it had been on Bowery or Uptown, or even in India. He was fixed in the order of his spiritual master and the Vedic view, a view that wasn't going to be influenced by the radical changes of the 1960s. Now, if it so happened that these young people, because of some change in the American cultural climate, were to prove more receptive to them, then that would be welcome. And that would also be Krishna as well. Actually, because of the omnious influence of the Kali millennium, this was historically the worst of times for spiritual cultivation, hippie revolution or not. And Srila Prabhupada was trying to transplant Vedic culture into a more alien ground that had any previous spiritual master, so he expected to find this work extremely difficult. Yet in this generally bad age, just prior to Prabhupada's arrival on the Lower East Side, tremors of dissatisfaction and revolt against the Kali Yoga culture itself began vibrating through American society, sending waves of young people to wander the streets of New York, Lower East Side, in search of something beyond the ordinary life, looking for alternatives, seeking spiritual fulfillment. These young people, broken from their stereotyped materialistic backgrounds and drawn together now on New York's Lower East Side, were the ones who were by chance or choice or destiny to become the congregation of the Swami's storefront offerings of kirtana and spiritual guidance.
The Swami's arrival went unnoticed. The neighbors said someone new had taken the gift shop next to the laundry. There was a strange picture in the window now, but no one knew what to make of it. Some passerby noticed a piece of paper announcing classes in Bhagavad Gita taped to the window. A few stopped to read, but no one knew what to make of it. They didn't know what Bhagavad Gita was, and the few who did thought maybe a yoga bookstore or something. The Puerto Ricans in the neighborhood would look in the window at Harvey Cohen's painting and then blankly walk away. The manager of the mobile gas station next door couldn't care less who had moved in. It just didn't make any difference. The tombstone sellers and undertakers across the street didn't even care, and for the drivers of the countless cars and trucks that passed by, Swamiji's place didn't even exist. But there were young people around who had been intrigued with the painting, who went up to the window to read the little piece of paper. Some of them even knew about the Bhagavad Gita, although the painting of Lord Chaitanya and the dancers didn't seem to fit. A few thought maybe they would attend Swami Bhaktivedanta's classes and check out the scene. Howard Wheeler was hurrying from his apartment on Mott Street to a friend's apartment on Fifth Street, a quiet place where he hoped to find some peace. He walked up Mott Street to Houston, turned right, and began to walk east across Bowery, past the rushing traffic and stumbling derelicts, and toward Second Avenue. Howard. After crossing Bowery just before the second, I saw Swamiji jauntily strolling down the sidewalk, his head held high in the air, his hand in the bead bag. He struck me like a famous actor in a very familiar movie. He seemed ageless. He was wearing the traditional saffron-colored robes of a sannyasi and quaint white shoes with points. Coming down Houston, he looked like the genie that popped out of Aladdin's lamp.
Howard, age 26, was a tall, large-bodied man with long dark hair, a profuse beard, and black-framed eyeglasses. He was an instructor in English at Ohio State University and was fresh from a trip to India, where he had been looking for a true guru. Prabhupada noticed Howard, and they both stopped simultaneously. Howard asked the first question that popped into his mind. Are you from India? Prabhupada smiled. Oh, yes, and you? Howard, I told him no, but that I had just returned from India and was very interested in his country and the Hindu philosophy. He told me he had come from Calcutta and had been in New York for almost 10 months. His eyes were as fresh as cordial as a child's, and even standing before the trucks that roared and rumbled their way down Houston Street, he imitated a cool tranquility that was unshakably established in something far beyond the great metropolis that roared around us. Howard never made it to his friend's place that day. He went back to his own apartment on Mott Street to Keith and Wally, his roommates, to tell them and everyone he knew about the guru who had inexplicably appeared within their midst.
Keith and Howard had been to India. Now they were involved in various spiritual philosophies, and their friends used to come over and talk about enlightenment. 18-year-old Chuck Barnett was a regular visitor. Chuck, you would open the door of the apartment, and thousands of cockroaches would disappear into the woodwork. The smell was enough to knock you over. So Keith was trying to clean the place and kick some people out. They were sharing the rent. Wally, Keith, Howard, and several others. Due to a lack of any other process, they were using LSD to try and increase their spiritual life. Actually, we were all trying to use drugs to help in meditation. Anyway, Wally, Howard, and Keith were trying to find the perfect spiritual master, as we all were. Howard remembers his own spiritual seeking as reading books on Eastern philosophy and religion, burning lots of candle and incense, and taking ganja and PO and LSD as aids in meditation. Actually, it was more intoxication than meditation. Meditation was a euphemism that somehow connected our highs with our readings. Keith, 29, the son of a Southern Baptist minister, was a PhD candidate in history at Columbia University. He was preparing his thesis on the rise of revivalism in the southern United States. Dressed in old denim cutoffs, sandals, and a t-shirt, he was something of a guru among the Mott Street coterie.
I'm sorry, which paragraph? Okay. While he was in his 30s, shabbily dressed, bearded, intellectual, and well read in Buddhist literature. He had been a radio engineer in the army and, like his roommates, was unemployed. He was reading Alan Watts, Herman Hesse, and others talking about spiritual enlightenment and taking LSD. In India, Howard and Keith had visited Hardwar, Rishikesh, Benares, and other holy cities, experiencing Indian temples, hashish, and dysentery. One evening in Calcutta, they had come upon a group of sadhus chanting the Hare Krishna mantra and playing hand cymbals. For Howard and Keith, as for many Westerners, the essence of Indian philosophy was Shankara's doctrine of impersonal oneness. Everything is false except for the one impersonal spirit. They had bought books that told them whatever way you express your faith, that way is a valid spiritual path. Now the three roommates, Howard, Keith, and Raleigh, began to mix various philosophies into a hodgepodge of their own. Howard would mix a little Whitman, Emerson, Thoreau, or Blake. Keith would cite biblical references, and Raleigh would add a little bit of Buddhist wisdom. And they all kept up on Timothy Leary, Thomas à Kempis, and many others, the whole mixture being subject to a total re-evaluation whenever the group experienced a new cosmic insight through LSD.
This was the group that Howard returned to that day in July. Excitedly, he told them about the Swami, how he looked, and what he had said. Howard told how after they had stood and talked together, the Swami had mentioned his place nearby on Second Avenue, where he was planning to hold some classes. Howard, I walked around the corner with him. He pointed out a storefront building between First and Second Streets next door to a mobile filling station. It had been a curiosity shop, and someone had painted the words "Matchless Gifts" over the window. At that time, I didn't realize how prophetic those words were. "This is a good area?" he asked me. I told him that I thought it was. I had no idea what he was going to offer at his classes, but I knew that all my friends would be glad that an Indian Swami was moving into the neighborhood. The word spread, although it wasn't so easy now for Carl Jurgens and certain others to come up from the Bowery in Chinatown. They had other things to do. Ruby Dubois, a 25-year-old writer for comic books, had visited Prabhupada on the Bowery, and when he heard about the Swami's new place, he wanted to drop by. James Green and Bill Epstein had not forgotten the Swami, and they wanted to come. The Paradox restaurant was still a live connection and brought new interested people, and others, like Stefan Guarino, saw the Swami's sign in the window. Steve, age 26, was a caseworker for the city's welfare department, and one day on his lunch break, as he was walking home from the welfare office at Fifth Street and Second Avenue, he saw the Swami's sign taped to the window. He had been reading a paperback Bhagavad Gita, and he promised himself he would attend the Swami's classes.
That day, as he stood with the Swami before the storefront, Howard had also noticed a little sign in the window. Lectures in Bhagavad Gita. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Will you bring your friends? Prabhupada had asked. Yes, Howard promised. Monday evening. The summer evening was warm, and in the storefront, the back windows and front door was opened wide. Young men, several of them dressed in black denims and button-down sport shirts with broad, dull stripes, had left their worn sneakers by the front door and were now sitting on the floor. Most of them were from the lower east side. No one had to go to great trouble to come here. The little room was barren. No pictures, no furniture, no rug, not even a chair. Only a few plain straw mats. A single bulb hung from the ceiling into the center of the room. It was 7 o'clock, and about a dozen people had gathered, when the Swami suddenly opened the side door and entered the room. He wasn't wearing a shirt, and a saffron cloth that draped his torso left his arms and some of his chest bare. His complexion was smooth, golden brown, and as they watched him, his head shaven, his ears long lobbed, and his aspect grave. He seemed like pictures of scene of the Buddha in meditation. He was old, yet erect in his posture, fresh and radiant. His forehead was decorated with the yellowish clay marking of the Vaishnavas. Prabhupada recognized big, beardy Howard and smiled. You have brought your friends.
Yes, Howard answered in his loud, resonant voice. Ah, very good. Prabhupada stepped out of his wide shoes, sat down on a thin mat, faced his congregation, and indicated that they could be seated. He distributed several pairs of brass hand cymbals and briefly demonstrated the rhythm. One, two, three. He began playing, a startling ringing sound. He began singing Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Now it was the audience's turn. Chant, he told them. Some already knew. Gradually, the others caught on, and after a few rounds, they all were chanting together. Most of these young men and a few young women present had at one time or another embarked on the psychedelic voyage in search of a new world of expanded consciousness. Boldly and recklessly, they had entered the turbulent, forbidden waters of LSD, PO, and magic mushrooms. Heedless of warnings, they had risked everything and done it. Yet there was merit in their valor. their eagerness to find the extra dimensions of the self, to get beyond ordinary existence, even if they didn't know what the beyond was, or whether they would ever return to the comfort of the ordinary. Nonetheless, whatever truth they had found, they remained unfulfilled, and whatever worlds they had reached, these young psychedelic voyagers had always returned to the Lower East Side. Now they were sampling the Hare Krishna mantra. When the kirtan suddenly sprang up from the Swami's cymbals and sonorous voice, they immediately felt that it was going to be something far out. Here was another chance to trip out, and willingly they began to flow with it. They would surrender their minds and explore the limits of the chanting for all it was worth. Most of them had already associated the mantra with the mystical of Upanishads and Gita, which had called out to them in worlds of mystery, eternal spirit, negating illusion. But whatever it was, this Indian mantra, let it come, they thought. Let its waves carry us far and high. Let's take it and let the effects come. Whatever the price, let it come. The chanting seemed simple and natural enough. It was sweet and wasn't going to harm anyone. And it was, in its own way, far out.
As Prabhupada chanted in his own inner ecstasy, he observed his motley congregation. He was breaking ground in a new land now. As the hand cymbals rang, the call and response of the Hare Krishna mantra swelled, filling the evening. Some neighbors were annoyed. Puerto Rican children, enchanted, appeared at the door and window, looking. Twilight came. Exotic it was, yet anyone could see that a Swami was raising an ancient prayer in praise of God. This wasn't rock or jazz. He was a holy man, a Swami, making a public religious demonstration. But the combination was strange. An old Indian Swami chanting an ancient mantra with a storefront full of young American hippies singing along. Prabhupada sang on, his shaven head held high and tilted, his body trembling slightly with emotion. Confidently, he led the mantra, absorbed in pure devotion, and they responded. More passers-by were drawn to the front window and open door. Some jeered, but the chanting was too strong. Within the sound of the kirtan, even the car horns were faint staccato. The vibration of auto engines and the rumble of trucks continued, but in the distance now, unnoticed.
Gathered under the dim electric light in the bare room, the group chanted after their leader, growing gradually from a feeble, hesitant chorus to an approximate harmony of voices. They continued clapping and chanting, putting into it whatever they could, in hopes of discovering its secrets. This Swami was not simply giving some 5-minute sample demonstration. For the moment, he was their leader, their guide in an unknown realm. Howard and Keith's little encounter with the kirtan in Calcutta had left them outsiders. The chanting had never before came like this, right in the middle of the Lower East Side, with a genuine Swami leading them. In their minds was psychedelic ambitions to see the face of God, fantasies and visions of Hindu teachings, and it presumed that it was all personal light. Prabhupada had encountered a similar group on the Bowery, and he knew this group was experienced in the mantra in the proper disciplined reverence and knowledge. But he let them chant in their own way. In time, their submission to the spiritual sound, their purification, and their enlightenment and ecstasy in chanting and hearing Hare Krishna would come. He stopped the kirtan. The chanting had swept back the world, but now the Lower East Side rushed in again. The children at the door began to chatter and laugh. Cars and trucks made their rumbling heard once more, and a voice shouted from a nearby apartment, demanding quiet. It was now past 7:30. Half an hour had elapsed.
Thank you, Parth, and everyone else who also read. This was a really nice description, in my opinion, of uh, Prabhupada's continued stay. I think he just moved in, according to this passage, to a new place in the Lower East Side in New York City. was also really interesting to see that all the events throughout this journey, it had only been about 10 months, as we kept seeing in this reading. He'd only been in New York City for about 10 months, and it's about, I think, 6 chapters or something that we've read so far since Prabhupada had arrived in America. So it's just to see how much story there is to tell of his life and journey just in that 10 months. Devon says he just moved from the Bowery to 26 Second Avenue, Mashal Skip. Yeah. So I remember a couple of weeks ago, so I wasn't able to attend last week, but yeah, I remember from the readings a couple of weeks ago, he was in the Bowery and, he had to move out due to a robbery and just undesirable conditions in the Bowery. So just seeing all this journey, it's really inspiring because he's moving multiple places. In my life, it's like moving houses every 5 or 10 years itself is a big daunting step in life. So what to speak of his constant on the move kind of journey? Well, is there anything that people would like to share, point out? Sharing is caring. Anything they liked or was inspired by? Yes, Parth?
One thing I just wanted to share while reading this chapter of Breaking Ground in Prabhupada Lilamrit, as Howard and Keith came to this kirtan, right? They really were deep into the kirtan, as they said that the, the chanting had swept the world away. The children, their sounds were gone. The cars and trucks, their rumbling was very faint, and the voices from the apartment was quiet. But now, when Prabhupada stopped the kirtan, the Lower East Side rushed in. The children at the door began to chatter and laugh. Cars and trucks made their rumbling heard once more, and a voice shouted from a nearby apartment demanding quiet. So that shows that throughout every, like from Howard and Keith's perspective, they had gone to India, right? But they didn't really feel this connection with anything there. But now they definitely will take up the Krishna consciousness, or at least I think, because they felt that deep connection to the movement too. And just so crazy that Prabhupada has that much faith in the Lord that anything can happen, right? Just want to share.
Thank you so much, Parth. Yeah. And you're right. They ended up being pretty prominent devotees in the movement later on from this point. So we can see that both of them, Howard and Keith, who later became Hayagriva Prabhu and Kirtanananda, they both made very, very significant contributions to the furthering of Prabhupada's establishing ISKCON and, you know, continuing the movement in their own ways. So it was really uh, insightful what you said because how people get attracted to this movement even today is still somewhat natural in that they get attracted through the holy name, the kirtan, the books, and the prasadam. I know a devotee who's Prabhupada's disciple, Narendra Prabhu here. He always mentions that the prasadam is also really strong attraction for a lot of devotees. So because it's out of the world. Anywhere you go, at any temple, you get the most opulent free vegetarian food. So yeah, Sia.
Hare Krishna, I was also gonna just talk about how I was as we were reading Prabhupada Lamrit, I was just waiting for when the stories about how different devotees came into Prabhupada's association would come. And so learning about how Hayagriva Prabhu, because he led such an inspiring life and teaches such a great lesson of um, cho- trying to pursue bhakti early on versus not waiting till the last moment through his life. So I feel like when I got to read the intro today, that was really interesting for me. And also when they were talking about how they were leading the mantra, like how they were all singing kirtan, they talked about how even the cars were just like staccatos and they were faint, and how people might have been shouting or jeering, but the chanting was so strong. And that just made me think about when I'm doing kirtan or I'm listening to other people doing kirtan, sometimes I get distracted by the outside noise. But in this case, and I've been like being trying to be Krishna conscious for a while, and these people are so new, but already they were so focused on trying to listen to the mantra. So I got inspired by that. Hare Krishna.
What a great point. I mean, yeah, that whole section is a really also a glorification of the pure devotees like Prabhupada, but also the holy name itself. Obviously, Prabhupada being as acquainted and experienced as he was with bhakti, had an even more special ability to chant the holy name and attract people naturally. But it's at the end of the day, it's the opulence and the glorification of the holy name that really just brings out the power of it, the holy name. It attracts some people. And in a place like New York City, because I think, as you also said, I also have our temple in Laguna Beach. It's in a small town, and there's a fire station nearby, and there's often some car like police chases or fire trucks and sirens going on, or parties going on near the beach. But all these distractions, when I think back to New York City is such a busy city compared to any other. It's one of the busiest cities in the world. So, what to speak of Laguna Beach? It's a very small city. I don't think anyone knows. But yeah, I mean, compared to New York City, what kind of distraction could really take my attention away from listening to the holy name? So, yeah, getting distracted is on our end a little, um, what's the word? We can get over it pretty easily, especially when we put in that kind of perspective. So, really, thank you for sharing that. I also feel the same way. Keshav?
Wanted to say that I just we were reading that like Prabhupada is so compassionate because there are all of these hippies and they have this their own idea that like happiness is derived through like doing a lot of drugs and it's like stimulating yourself like through all forms like drugs and like music and yeah and then but Prabhupada, because Prabhupada, he like, in time, he was thinking like that they are having their ecstasy, they have their own way of thinking, but soon by doing the Krishna conscious practice, they'll be delivered. I was just like Prabhupada didn't get angry because like someone was doing like weird stuff. Like if someone comes here and they'll be like acting a bit weird, I would be like, oh, why are you acting weird? But like Prabhupada is like so compassionate, like even like the weirdest people, he tried to just like help them.
Yeah. He even had to go undergo a personal experience with, well, one of them. He actually underwent a lot, but with a few weeks ago, we were reading about David Allen, I think, who he had to share a room with. So, and, that had its own culmination in a pretty problematic episode. So it's what to speak of our very minute and brief interactions with some people who we may think as little unusual, but when Prabhupada had to deal with such people on a probably regular basis, even daily basis, and still was able to do as much as he did in establishing the Krishna consciousness everywhere he went, then, it really puts into perspective what we can do. So, yeah, thank you for mentioning that, Keshav. And I'm looking at the chat. I think Vivan is putting also the descriptions of the sounds rushing back into the building after the kirtan ended shows how powerful the Hare Krishna Mahamantra actually is. And yeah, that's completely true. It's the way, again, like a lot of people were attracted initially were through the chanting of the holy name. Prabhupada famously went to the Tompkins Square Park in New York City and just chanted sitting under that tree. And eventually people were attracted and they started chanting and dancing with him. And they started, coming to his programs in New York City. And then the rest is history. So it's just simple, pure chanting. I think this also really establishes a certain simple standard of kirtan where we don't have to get so much enthralled with do we have enough skill or not, and do we have enough instruments and resources or whatever. Uh, but just because, Prabhupada was able to simply chant, just him and his kartals, that's all. And look what that yielded. So it's really inspiring when we think about how powerful and um, capable the holy name of Krishna is in uh, in establishing the glories of Krishna and the movement itself. Does anyone have anything else to share or yes, yeah.
I'm gonna go find that exact quote, but just what you were talking just now reminded me about. So like in the mood and mission of Srila Prabhupada, um, like one of the points in the success, like in a chapter called the success of the movement, I have to go bring the book, but it talks about how even Prabhupada was like super surprised to see how potent the Mahamantra was, and like he didn't think that it would be this big of a movement, but when he realized, he was like, wow, like my guru really did know. And it it just like surprised me because Prabhupada came and he had that mindset that even if one person is like if one person becomes fully devotional, then then I'm pleased that this is successful. But like it ended up being such a big movement with so many pure devotees, and so yeah, I was just thinking about that.
That's another thing. It's one is the faith in the holy name and how powerful it is, but also the faith in the instruction of Guru. And we saw, I think, what was it in the I think in the purport of the one of the verses we saw in chapter 11 that we read toward the beginning of the program, where Prabhupada was writing how important it is to take the instruction of a guru because through Arjuna sort of acting as the disciplic connection between Krishna demonstrating his four-armed form and his universal form, everyone else in the universe was able to get a part of that mercy of being able to see that form. And so similarly, taking the instruction of a guru seriously, they automatically get that mercy in some way. So, Prabhupada initially he was on his way to America a little. He was unsure of what would happen. Like, what am I going to do? Why is Krishna? Why are you making me do this? Or like just whatever. But soon he saw the result of just acting on his guru's word, his instruction of go preach in the West. And even at such an advanced age with almost nothing, it's just amazing to see how that turned within a year almost. Um, Already there were several groups of devotees, or there was a big group of devotees joining the Hare Krishna movement, and then, exponentially it just grew and grew. So really nice to see that journey and always inspiring. Well, if that's all for today, then we can end it here. And I'll end with a prayer because I think it's nice to end with a prayer. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, dear Sri Panchatattva, if you so desire, please allow everyone who joined in this youth jam today or who didn't join to take up the qualities of humility and faith in the holy name of Krishna and in the instruction of our spiritual master so that we can also try to expand Krishna consciousness in whatever way we can, wherever we can. Thank you. Om Tat Sat. If you agree with this prayer, in whole or in part, please unmute and say Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha, Vasanabhyavicha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namah. We'll see you back next week at 3 p.m. PST. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.